This was my Christian ethics and social justice class. Now, throughout both semesters, my teacher, Mr. McLarty, attempted to show us and to kind of open our eyes to the injustices that we see throughout society. First semester, he introduced us into the topic of poverty, not only because he wanted to, but because it was the Justice Summit of that year. And the way he did it was he taught us the different beliefs of four philosophers and connected their beliefs to a way that we should change poverty. And to me, that interested me the most. To me, it got me thinking, how could we apply these to change something that's controlled us or that's affected us for so long? And as a final project, he told us that we needed to develop a way, or we needed to, as a class, come up with a method in order to change poverty or to make poverty more known. So as a class, we decided to make a website. As a class, we decided to go out and find 3 to 4 pictures of people suffering in poverty and to talk to them, to kind of make them feel like they're human beings instead of just kind of ridiculing them and pushing them to the side. So what I did was I personally went out to my grandma's neighborhood. I made bean burritos and I got bottles of water and I went out to anybody I saw on the curb. I gave them the burrito and the water and I tried to talk to them. And many of them gave me different stories. They told me that they struggled, whether it be with drugs or with alcohol, or they just had bad luck. But one person really stood out to me, and that person was Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter was a man, tall, lanky man, who looked around 60 to 65 years old because of the way he dressed and because of his long beard, when in reality he was only around 35 and had been homeless for around 10 years. Now, when he told me his story, he told me that he was a janitor in San Francisco and wanted to come down to Orange County in order to become kind of something higher. He wanted to either become a writer, or he wanted to become he wanted to work for a writing company, basically. And what that showed, but the most important part of that story was that he had let alcoholism take control of his route. He had allowed the one mistake that he couldn't put to the side control the rest of his life. And right then and there I realized that not every mistake needs to be such a big one. We need to learn how to let go, and we need to learn how to move on in order for us to really succeed in life. And unfortunately, Scott Ritter was unable to let his certain mistake go. Now, that doesn't mean he's any less of a human than we are. That doesn't mean he's any less of a person than we are. He still is a human being, and he still has an identity. Now, the one thing we need to realize is that any person we see on the curb, any person we, notice around putting their hand down and asking for money is the exact same as we are. We make mistakes and they make mistakes. The mistakes just had a different effect on us than they did on them. So first semester I realized that in order to put a change to poverty and to help people suffering in poverty known, we needed to talk to them as if they were just like us. There was no poverty line, there was no boundary between rich and poor. It was just me, you, and the space in front of us, and we were going to control this. That's how we needed to go about this topic. Second semester was different. Second semester, he allowed us to combine a certain injustice in society along with poverty. Now, my team and I chose the injustice of racism and discrimination. Now, racism and discrimination is a very sensitive topic ever since slavery and ever since the whole civil rights movement. However, now, even though it seems to have died down, it still exists very much throughout our society, especially here in the Bay Area. Now, the way we related it to poverty was that we went out and we decided to become what Mr. McLarty calls ponders, practitioners, prophets, and poets. Now, the way we do that is we practice what we preach as a prophet, and we ponder on what we send as a poet. So now, as a prophet, we needed to commit a prophetic action where we went out and made the injustice known. We went out and made sure that people knew people of color, any foreign-born, or any other descent were just as human as we were. Whether it be that they lived in poverty or whether they didn't, it still mattered that they were seen as a certain person that they were, not because of the color of their race or because of the position they were in. That's what we tried to help people realize. And we went out downtown over by the SAP Center, and we walked with posters that said, homeless people have feelings too, people in poverty still have dignity, different things like that. And after every time we walked by a person, they'd look and they'd glance away, kind of as if they wanted to ignore the fact that it existed. And I noticed that. I noticed that as a society, we become ignorant to the injustice that we have in our world. And it's not going to make it any better. It's not going to make it suddenly disappear. What I realized second semester is that we need to push ourselves to realize that these injustices exist. That these are going to become known throughout the world, and they're going to continue unless we put a stop to it. So now one prophetic action like my teams, or another poetic action like we did based off of our prophetic action, can put a whole stop to how we view the world. It can put a whole stop to how we view just one other person by ourselves. Now from the beginning of the year to now, I realized that poverty, racism and discrimination, and any other injustice we see in our society continues to still have an impact on people today. However, the more we make it known, and the more that we realize it exists, the easier it'll be for us to become that ponderer, that practitioner, that prophet, that poet, in order for it to finally be under our power, in order for it to finally say, you know what, I need to stop and I need to realize what I'm doing. As the 4 P's come into play, we should realize that we can put a stop